Oh, okay. All right. Start at the bottom is working. Would you please do our opening prayer?
Okay. Thank you, Lord, for waking us up to meet as sisters in Christ. Let us learn and understand your word. Keep the sick and worried in your loving hands. Bless and guide us this week until we meet again. Amen.
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 Thank you.
Very, very nice. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Last week I introduced you to one of the devils of the Bible. He didn't have the body of an angel devil, but he was a human being, and he was a terrible human being. And I gotta click this. Okay. Anyway, he was one of 70 boys that were sons of Gideon. And it's such a shame he was such a terrible person, because Gideon, oh, here we go. They're going to sell us. I don't know what he's going to sell us, but I don't know. Okay. I'm sorry, but I keep that there just in case I hear from the doctor. But anyway, Gideon was such a fine gentleman, and he had 70 sons, and he had this particular one was born and raised in Shechem, and we'll talk about Shechem in a few minutes. His mother is referred to as a maid servant, and that would be, she may have been a wife, she may have been a concubine, she may have been the servant to one of the women that lived in the household. We don't know, but it's kind of like, hey, we do know Hagar was a maid servant to Sarah, and she was a concubine, and she, yes, ma'am, yes, Marlene.
Oh, Gideon had to have more than one concubine,
Oh yeah,
because there's no way two women
can't handle
could have
that.
70 kids.
No,
They'd have killed themselves long before that.
yeah, you're right.
But we're not told anything about them, but
Yeah, we
he
don't have,
had to
yeah,
have a good old time
Yep.
many times.
yeah. Very definitely. At least 70 anyway,
70 that lived.
that lived. That's correct. That's a very good point. I do have to say, I think when we read the Bible, we have to take numbers that are given with a little grain of salt, okay? Because if you do the math, even just in this chapter, we left it with, it says Gideon had 70 sons, okay? Well, then it says that Gideon killed 70 of his brothers. Well, he's left, and we read that Jotham, the youngest of Gideon's sons, escapes. So that means if we go by the numbers, it should be 68 that he killed. However, we also know that in the Bible, things are really pretty much rounded off, which is very understandable. But we don't have a particular meaning for the number 70, but we do know that a lot of numbers are rounded off and used as, like, we know 40 is a biggie. We've been through that one, okay? 40 is referred to so many times, okay? We have the 12 tribes of Israel, so a lot of things are done in 12, okay? And 666 becomes the number associated with Satan. So numbers do have, some numbers have a very definite meaning. And also, they throw in some numbers when they talk about when the Israelites went into the Canaanite land, into the promised land, which was the land of the Canaanites. Okay, they list how many men went into this battle and this and that and the other thing. Okay, and then they take these census, and they're supposed to take the census of the fighting men. Okay, but this we know gets to be very inaccurate, because we can't even keep track of it on a voting in our city. So I can't even imagine how they can take a very accurate census of these people. So again, when you read the stories in the Bible, be aware that they could be off by a couple of numbers. But the thing is, who cares? I mean, they're not critical, okay? But it just struck me that keep referring to the fact that Abimelech killed his 70 brothers, yet Gideon had 70 sons. So it should be he killed 68 brothers. So it's not a big deal, but just wanted to, in case any of you caught that, I wanted to answer your question before we even got that far, okay? Okay, so last week, just a quick catch up. We know that Abimelech went to the men of Shechem, Shechem being where he was raised. It does refer a little later on to those men as his brothers, okay? But it doesn't mean his blood brothers, okay? Because those were different. That was a different group. They were probably cousins, uncles, nephews, friends, cohorts. But, we refer to each other as sisters, okay? And men frequently did the same thing, your brothers, okay? So we hear about Jesus' brothers, okay? We don't know whether he had blood brothers on earth or what, but they refer to as brothers. So the term is thrown around a little bit loosely, okay? But anyway, we're told that he goes to the men of Shechem. Smart guy, okay? Abimelech wasn't stupid, except for some of the decisions he made against God, but basically he was shrewd. I guess shrewd is the word I want to use, because he wanted to be king. Now, mind you, this is in the days before Israel had kings, okay? They had not really asked for kings before, okay? They were a group of 12 tribes, all right? At this point, all the Israelites that were coming from the other side into the Canaanite land came, okay? But they didn't conquer all the land, all right? We know a lot of places were conquered, starting with Joshua when he came in at Jericho, okay? But unfortunately, they did not follow what God told them, and they did not kill all the Canaanites they encountered. So it made it impossible for them to inhabit all of the land that they were supposed to conquer. And one little point I'd like to go back to in Joshua is the fact that when Joshua, if you will recall, there were 12 tribes that came over. Joshua, they drew through lots, okay, to see who would get what land. And the Jewish people believed, we went through this before, but the Jewish people believed important things, decisions, could be done by lots. And the high priest, Jane mentioned this when she talked about the high priest, okay? The high priest had the dice, okay? And they believed that when the dice were thrown, that was God talking to them, God making the decision, and they followed through on it. So bear in mind that the land was, quote unquote, given to the Israelite tribes, all right, by view of the dice. That doesn't mean that they went in there to start with, okay, and each one lived in their whole territory, okay? And that becomes important as we start going through all of this, especially with Abimelech, okay? So just remember that just because when we look at that map and we look at the division of the tribes, that doesn't mean they had all that land, okay? It was just, sometimes it's just a very small portion. So just kind of keep that in mind. But anyway, Abimelech goes to Shechem, we said, and he tells them all, is it better to have, worry about all these 70 brothers that I've got floating around here in Canaanite land, okay, being the king, and he uses the word king, the leader, the king, all right, and it would have brought chaos, which is true. 70 people vying for the throne would have been a mess, okay? if you support me, I will be the king. Okay. So they said, oh, great idea. You're one of us. You were raised in Shechem. We know you. Yeah, let's do this. So they give him 70 shekels, I believe it is. Okay. And he goes out and he hires a bunch of mercenaries. Okay. And they're going to go out now and he's going to declare himself the king. But before he does that, he decides, he didn't tell his people in Shechem this, but he has already decided he's going to go and kill all those other brothers. Okay. And he goes in and he does that. And we did have the discussion last week. Marilyn came up with the answer. We talked about how did he possibly kill those 70 brothers with one stone. And we pretty well came to the conclusion, we don't know, it doesn't say, but it's probably that they were sacrificed on one altar, the altar of Baal, which were all over the place. Israel had gone to to idolatry. Okay, so they're killed off. But however, and we did read this, but I just want to just go over this one sentence here. It says, so they gave Abimelech his shekels, okay, and with the mercenaries who followed him, they went into his father's house at Ophrah. Now, his father was Gideon, okay, we're referring to Gideon, and he killed his brothers, the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, on one stone. And I think that's a good key, on one stone, okay? I think that's a good key to it being the altar, because they were laid out on the altar first. It doesn't say with one stone, okay? Now, mind you, Gideon is deceased at this point, okay? But Jotham, who is the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left because he hid himself, okay? And this becomes very important because he does a prophecy, which we're going to do today. Okay. Were there any questions about what's happened up to this point that we covered last week? Okay, we're all right with that. Okay. So let's see, where do we leave off? Leave off. Yeah, okay. Let us read. I'm just going to kind of go around if you don't mind. Donna, would you start? And would you read us verse 6, please? We're in chapter 9, verse 6.
Okay, let's see, find it. There it is. Then all the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo gathered beside the great tree at the pillar of Shechem to crown Abimelech king.
Okay, so this is the biggie. He's going to be the king. They're all thrilled. This is just wonderful. Okay, we're going to have the king. We're going to have a good leader. He knows what he's doing, okay? My notes say, it's almost hard to tell who was worse, Abimelech, who did the murdering, or the men of Shechem, who approved it. This was an ungodly leader given to an ungodly people who first rejected God's leadership over the nation and then embraced a cruel and brutal man. And this is something we must remember. God is the king. God is the ruler. God is the leader. The man appointed, even though they may call him king, he is the one who carries out the will of God, okay? And this is very evident in David, when David is pronounced king, Saul, when he's first pronounced king, and even Solomon, okay? They don't say they are the king or the leader. They say God is, and they're following God. Now, they sinned. That didn't stop them from sinning, but they did acknowledge that the leadership they were practicing was given to them by God. Abimelech did not. This was Abimelech, all right? And it was totally against God's will. And it was strictly what Abimelech did. And these evil men, yes, Jane?
No, finish your comment when you get done, though, when you get
Okay.
done.
Okay, this, where was I? Okay, a little, let's see, Alicia, what was I trying to say? Oh, okay. So
All
this
right.
is one of the reasons why he is not referred to as a king or the first king, okay? The first king was appointed and picked, selected by God, all right? He was not, and that is one of the reasons why the Bible does not refer to him as the first king of the Israelites. Yes, go ahead, Jane.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you
That's
lose
all
your
right,
thought.
no problem.
No, I'm always interested in what names mean, you know, back then.
Sure.
Now our names mean nothing, I don't think. I would hate to think of what my name must mean. But at any rate, Abimelech means my father is king. And that means it, you know, so you could think about, okay, so is he thinking about God? Probably not when he was named. But you wonder if Gideon or his concubine wife, I don't know who named this child Abimelech, but did they think of them, if it was Gideon, did he think of himself as a king, even though he said, no, I'm not going to be your king. God is your king. He said that, but he kind of sort of elevated himself to a certain kind of level, right? So
Yeah.
maybe did he kind of sort of think he was king when he knew he really wasn't? But it's just kind of an interesting
Sure,
thought.
It is. But one of the things that comes out somewhere in my lesson, but I can hit it right now. Yeah, Gideon did say God, and that was a good thing. Gideon recognized that. But number one, this is me thinking what you're saying, that even though he may not call himself a king, don't forget that all the nations around them had kings. And so it would be natural for other nations to refer to him as king and call him a king when they visited. Now, Gideon lived in a nice place. He didn't live in a grand palace, or he didn't have Solomon's or David's homes, okay? But for his place, as far as the publicity would be concerned, okay, I could see where they would refer to him as king. But another issue, at this point, God had not God, actually, I shouldn't say God, but in the politics of the times, heredity was not necessarily how you got to be king. Okay. In fact, even if you go as far up as, if we jump ahead when Solomon dies, one of his sons takes over as king of Judah. All right. And he is in the line because God promised that David's line would continue. Okay. But Israel is ruled by Rehoboam. Marlene, what's his name?
Jeroboam.
Jeroboam is the son, right? Or no, yeah, Jeroboam is Israel. You're right. Jeroboam is Israel, and Rehoboam, I think, is the son.
Rehoboam was Solomon's son.
Okay, so he wasn't in the line. Okay,
Right.
so you did not. It was kind of a practice sometimes that the next one in line did it because he was powerful, being a king's son. But it had that heredity. It's not like we have in Britain, where Queen Elizabeth died. The next one in line is her son. After him comes the grandson. Okay, those lines were not drawn at that time. So kingship was kind of floating around there,
And Gideon wasn't a king. He acknowledged that he wasn't king at one time, but you wonder if he kind of sort of thought maybe he was as time went on, because he kind of built that altar, that idol.
Well, he got a lot of women, whatever he did.
Man, he must have been good looking, right?
He must have had importance and social status to catch all those ladies on the thing. Okay. So now we've got
Barbara,
yes.
I'm sorry, could I just say one thing?
Sure.
Because you made the comment about how Abimelech was not king over all of Israel.
Right.
At this time, we need to remember Israel was still, I'm going to say, separate factions.
Yeah. They were very
Because
tribal.
they, remember, we talked about some of the tribes wouldn't come help some of the other tribes.
Right, yeah.
And every tribe was just looking out for himself, is maybe the way.
Exactly. It was very tribal.
Yeah.
And you had your leaders within the tribes and things like that. And in a minute, I'll get to exactly what Abimelech was leader of, and it wasn't a whole lot. Okay. So anyway, they make him, or if they crown him, I'm going to say they crown him king because in human life, this is what they did. Okay. But they crowned him king at a place in Shechem, which they call it the Tower of Shechem. Okay. And this is where they made him the king. Okay. So, and there's such an interesting history here that I want us to take some of that into consideration. But before we do, we're going to get, we do have to look at Shechem first. Never mind. Shechem. Okay. Would you get out your page 7 maps, please? The one we've been using.
While y'all are doing that, can I get somebody to text me that map so I can print it off?
You want just a picture of it?
If you can text, I don't have that for some reason.
Oh, okay.
I've been having problems with my email. And so I've just been trying to follow along with the maps in my Bible, but it's not the same as what y'all have.
Okay.
What is your number?
479
479
459
459
3437.
3437. Okay, I'll send it right now.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm sorry.
That's all right, no problem. Okay, if you will look at that, you see where the Jordan River is right down the middle of that land, okay? And almost in the middle of the middle, okay? If you look to the left, you will see Shechem.
How about my map?
Most of you see that, okay?
Yeah.
All right. And so this is the town we're talking about, okay? And take note because we're going to be talking about them momentarily. Shechem is the city. Mount Ebal or Ebal, okay, it's just north of it, and Mount Gerizim is just south of it. And those are two spots that are going to come into our conversation here. Okay, now the land that he was over, the rest of it is not even on the map. Okay, well, I'll give you the cities in a minute, but that area there, you can see it's not very populated. Okay, so he doesn't have a whole lot of land. It doesn't say that he is over Shiloh or Aphek. Okay, and there is a comment in my book that it was just a little bit north of Shechem that he ruled over. So he did not have a big territory at all. Okay, and you can see that's the land of Manasseh. Okay, and it's right it's just a little bit to the east of the Jordan River. Okay, it was a big city. It was a very important city, but it was not. That was it. That was kind of the other ones weren't that. that well known. Okay. Now I gotta pull another source here, excuse me. Okay. All right, so this is where Shechem is located, all right? That's where he was raised. That's where he got his support from. Okay, and so he went out and he killed, doesn't say exactly who he killed, doesn't even give the name of a tribe. With Gideon, they mentioned he was fighting with the Midians, okay? The people. This doesn't even say the people he fought, okay? So it's a little kind of up in the air, okay? But Shechem is this big city. It was originally built around the 16th century. All these dates are BC, all right? It was originally built around the 16th century, okay? Now we work backwards. Does anybody remember about the dates that the Israelites first entered Canaan? Moses died, Joshua took over. Okay, it was the 14th century. And they stopped at Shechem. And we will read later from Deuteronomy, okay, what happened at Shechem before they entered the promised land. I'm sorry. Yeah. They didn't say it at Shechem, but they talked about it before they entered the promised land, but it involves Shechem. Okay. So that Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim are very important spots. Okay. And Moses comes into it, Joshua and all that. So all this, that's in 1400s. Okay. We are talking Abimelech, roughly the 12th century. Okay. So time is going by. So Shechem's been there already 200 years. And it's going to be there another 200 years. Okay. So it doesn't get destroyed. Well, no, it gets destroyed into 1200. But there's evidence of it. Okay. So we have Jotham. All right. Would someone please read? Oh, we already did read it. Never mind. Okay. Okay. So he's being made king. And it's beside the pillar of Shechem. And this was a big, remember we said it was probably a big structure with a walk.
Uh-oh.
You're frozen.
I am frozen?
No, you're
Now
free.
you're back.
Okay, all right, okay. Okay, so the terebinth tree, and this tree must have been around a long time, okay? Because it's referred to by Joshua 150 years before. So that's got to be a big tree by now, okay? So these terebinth.
Frozen again, Barbara. Text her.
I'll text her.
Yeah.
Pick up.
Okay, were you frozen from each other or just me?
Just you.
You were frozen.
I don't know what causes it because there's nothing touching my computer. Okay, sorry about that. I hope we don't continue that. All right. But this terebinth tree is in the cashew family, and it's how they make turpentine.
Oh, wow.
I don't see a spiritual significance, but I thought that was kind of weird. Okay. All right. So Jotham gets up and he gives this warning. Well, so let's see, where are we? Janet, you're next. Would you read Jotham's warning, which is verses 7 through 15, the parable of the trees.
Okay. When it was told to Jotham, he went and stood on the top of Mount Gerizim and cried aloud and said to them, "Listen to me, you lords of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. The trees once went out to anoint a king over themselves. So they said to the olive trees, 'Reign over us.' The olive tree answered them, 'Shall I stop producing my rich oil, by which gods and mortals are honored, and go to sway over the trees?' Then the trees said to the fig tree, 'You come and reign over us.' But the fig tree answered them, 'Shall I stop producing my sweetness and my delicious fruit, and go to sway over the trees?' Then the trees said to the vine, 'You come and reign over us.' But the vine said to them, 'Shall I stop producing my wine that cheers gods and mortals, and go to sway?" I'm sorry. Somebody have something to say? Okay, and go to sway over the trees. So all the trees said to the bramble, 'You come and reign over us.' And the bramble said to the trees, 'If in good faith you are anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble, and I devour the cedars of Lebanon.'"
Okay, thank you. Okay, so see that mention of Mount Gerizim? All right, and we saw on the map that was just south of Shechem. Okay, so he hid himself, and obviously he's God inspired, because it would take a lot of guts to get up there on Mount Gerizim and give that warning and that speech. Okay, so it was real close. All right. An interesting note, my notes here say that this is a fable. It's referred to as a parable in some of this, but it's actually a fable. And a fable is defined as a narrative in which animals and inanimate objects of nature are made to act and speak as if they were humans. The word fable is not found in the Old Testament, but two fables actually appear. There's this passage, and then there's a passage from 2 Kings, which we will read later on, but it involves the death of Uriah. And I think we all know the story of that with Bathsheba and David, okay? But this is inanimate objects that are being used, okay? All right, now let's look at this. 1, 2, 3, okay. Okay, the phrase, now, did I freeze again?
No, you're okay.
Everybody was still, I wasn't sure, okay. Okay, now when they told Jotham, okay, about his brothers being killed, Jotham was the only son of Gideon who escaped the massacre. And he tells this parable to rebuke the men of Shechem for their choice of Abimelech as king. So he's not attacking Abimelech directly, but he's attacking these men, okay, who have supported Abimelech in killing his brothers and becoming king. He made this speech from the top of Mount Gerizim, the mountain from which Israel heard the blessings of God pronounced upon the obedient, about 150 years before. So we're going to take a look. Okay, I can get rid of those. All right. The first reference is in Deuteronomy 11:29. I'm going to read it because I don't want to spend time flipping back and forth. But I'm going to take it not just 29, but from 22 through 27 in Deuteronomy. Okay. Then Joshua said, now this is before they entered the land, okay? But they're about to. You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord. Yes, we are witnesses, they replied. Now then, said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, We will serve the Lord our God and obey him. On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem, he reaffirmed for them the decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone and set it up under the oak tree near the holy place of the Lord. See, he said to all the people, this stone will be a witness against us. It has heard all the words the Lord has said, and it will be a witness if you are untrue to your God. Okay, I'm sorry. So they had entered the promised land. They're in Shechem. Okay, and I do have the note there that the tower was built in the 17th century BC. Joshua is 1406, and Abimelech is the 1200s. I think the thing we need to note here is the fact that the Israelites swore they would be true to the gods. Okay, they would not worship idols. They would be faithful to the Lord, etc. Okay, 150 years later, where are they? Worshiping idols all over the place. Okay, so they did not carry out what they promised to do. Okay.
Barbara, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Could you give me those in Deuteronomy? I didn't catch the chapter and verse. I'm sorry.
Okay, it is Deuteronomy. Where am I?
11 something.
No, wait, hang in there. Oh, I know, I got ahead of myself, but that's okay. I got ahead of myself. We froze again, didn't we? No, okay.
No.
I'm sorry, this is when they got into the promised land, and it's Joshua.
Oh, I'm sorry.
20,
Okay.
no, you were right the first time. I skipped one I shouldn't have skipped. Okay, this is Joshua 24, verse 26. But the story I took from 22 to 27.
Thank you.
Okay, the Deuteronomy one, which I should have read first, okay, was verse 29. And I will read 22 to 29. This is the story before they entered Canaan.
Thank
And
you.
this is Moses, okay? This is Moses. If you carefully observe all these commandments I'm giving you to follow, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him and hold fast to him, then the Lord will drive out all these nations before you, and you will dispossess nations larger and stronger than you. Every place where you set your foot will be yours. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon and from the Euphrates to the Mediterranean. No one will be able to stand against you. The Lord your God, as he promised, will put the terror and fear of you in the whole land wherever you go. See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commands of the Lord your God that I am giving you today. The curse if you disobey the commands of the Lord your God and turn away from the way that I command you today by following the other gods, which you have not known. When the Lord your God has brought you into the land you're entering to possess, you are to proclaim on Mount Gerizim the blessings and on Mount Ebal the curses. Okay, so here, this is just before they enter the promised land. Moses is still alive. He hasn't died yet, but we know he dies before they enter the promised land. And he's telling them, you can go in there and just wipe it out, take it over. I mean, what more does God have to do to impress these people? You know, I'm with you. Oh, do it. Get it. Take it. It's your land. And they don't. So they don't end up with the land. It's 150 years after this, and they still don't have the land. Okay? But he's telling them they must follow the Lord, no idols, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Now, Moses has more to say. And this is from Joshua 8:33. No, this is from, I'm sorry, Deuteronomy 27:12. Then Moses and the Levitical priests said to all Israel, be silent, Israel, and listen. You have now become the people of the Lord your God. Obey the Lord your God and follow his commands and decrees that I give you today. On that same day, Moses commanded the people, when you have crossed the Jordan, these tribes will stand on Mount Gerizim to bless the people. The tribes of Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin. And these tribes shall stand on Mount Ebal to announce curses. Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. The Levites shall recite to all the people of Israel in a loud voice, quote, cursed is anyone who makes an idol, a thing detestable to the Lord, the work of skilled hands, and sets it up in secret. Then all the people shall say, amen. Now there is a whole list of curses we're not going to go into. Okay, so this is the Shechem deal, all right? Moses talks to them before they enter the promised land. He tells them, this is what you're supposed to follow the Lord. I'm with you. I'll fight with you. It's going to be great. Okay. Then he tells them that there are going to be blessings and curses depending on what they do. And the people will stand. The group of tribes will stand at Mount Gerizim, which is where Jotham spoke from. And another group will stand on Mount Ebal. Now, it does not state why certain tribes were chosen. It doesn't say. It doesn't say because they were better or worse. Or it just names them. Okay, could be alphabetical in Hebrew for all I know. I don't know, but that's the way it's done. Now, when they enter the promised land, they get to Shechem. That was the first one I read where Joshua talked, and he said, "I've got all these things in the book of the law, okay, and I'm going to bury them here by that tree." That's that terebinth tree by the Tower of Shechem, okay? And that is where they bury the laws that they put on the tablets, etc. Okay, so Abimelech not only is so anti what God has preached, he even gets crowned king at the spot where the law is buried. Okay, that's pretty bad. Okay, I mean, I can't even imagine the how mad God must have been. Okay, which obviously he was, because Abimelech doesn't get very far very long. Okay, so you know, kind of bear that in mind, that the Jews have just totally forgotten everything that God wanted them to do, and they started out saying, "Oh, we'll do it. We're ready. We're and they don't. Okay, and that's the whole sad part about this, is that they could have been a great nation, and look today how Israel has never become the nation it's possible. It would have been possible to do. Could have ruled the world. Okay, but they didn't. They didn't follow through. Okay, so that's where Jotham was standing on that Mount Gerizim, which God said, that's where you'll get your blessings from. Okay, now let's look at what the fable means. Okay, the first part says, the trees went forth to anoint a king over Shechem. In the fable told by Jotham, the worthy trees like the olive, the fig, and the vine didn't want to be king. Okay, but the unworthy bramble agreed to be the king. The promise of the bramble, he says, I'll be king, sure, come take shelter in my shade. This was ridiculous. Do you know why?
No shade.
Yeah, a bramble crawls along the floor, it creeps, okay? He didn't have any shade to give, all right? So his first promise is not going to come true. He's a low, thorny bush, okay? And he can offer shade to no one, especially a tree, okay? So this is showing how ridiculous it is. Marlene?
And I think you said another word that was they're short, thorny bushes.
Yeah.
So if you tried to get close to them,
Right.
you'd probably get pricked.
Exactly. And that is the point. Another point coming out that, yeah, they are not only, can you not get their shade, but they're harmful. And anything that came, you couldn't grow anything there. Another tree couldn't grow there. Nothing could prosper there, okay? Because they would hurt it and kill it before it got there, okay?
Think rare rabbit.
Yeah. So finally, okay, so finally the position was offered to the bramble, which not only produced nothing of value and was quite worthless as timber, but was a positive menace to the farmer who had to wage continual war against its encroachment. So it was a fast growing thing. So what it's saying is you don't have to be too bright to figure this out. The trees are majestic and good and helpful, all right? The bramble it's worthless, it's useless. Right? To me, it's like saying, God, why did you make mosquitoes? You know, kind of the same, the same idea. Why did you make brambles? Okay, so they're showing that while the trees are majestic and intelligent and wise and know they are producing for the world, they're producing oil, they're producing fruits, okay, things the world can use, all right? Brambles don't do anything but cause trouble. They're evil, all right? And yet, this is what is chosen to be king. So it's comparing Abimelech to the bramble, okay? So, which also was pretty clever to think of this little fable of his, okay? So, therefore, the condensed moral of the fable is weak, worthless, and wicked men will ever be foremost to thrust themselves into power. And in the end, they bring ruin upon themselves and on the unhappy people over whom they preside. And we know Aesop's fable, every fable has a moral, okay? And this is the moral of this fable, okay? That don't pick a weak person. Don't pick an evil person, okay? Because they're going to make you miserable. They're going to fall down and you're going to fall down with them, okay? So, all right, where am I? Marlene, would you please read verses 16 through 21, please?
16 through 21.
Yeah.
Now, therefore, if you have dealt in truth and integrity in making Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have dealt with him as he deserved, for my father fought for you and risked his life and delivered you from the land of Midian, but you have risen against my father's house today and have killed his sons, 70 men on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your relative. If then you have dealt in truth and integrity with Jerubbaal and his house this day, rejoice in Abimelech and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and consume the men of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let the fire come out from the men of Shechem and from Beth Millo and consume Abimelech. Then Jotham escaped and fled and went to Beer and remained there because of Abimelech, his brother. I'm sorry.
Okay. So this is Jotham. He's applying the fable to the city of Shechem, telling them they'll be repaid for choosing this worthless man. He starts out by saying, and this is just kind of if you've acted in truth and sincerity, it means Jotham raised this for the sake of argument, okay? He didn't believe that 68 of his brothers were murdered for the sake of truth and sincerity, okay? Because he is your brother, you had a different word, relative. Remember, I said they call him brother, but he wasn't blood brother, but that's what they used in my translation. Okay, so the real reason the men of Shechem supported Abimelech was because he was some relative. Okay, Abimelech's mother, though only a maidservant of Gideon, was from Shechem, and he probably grew up there. Let fire come from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem. Here, Jotham's warning to the men of Shechem was that their unwise choice would come back to hurt them. He predicted that fire would come forth from Abimelech and devour them. After this bold warning, he ran away and fled for his life. Okay, the prophecy of Jotham was not immediately fulfilled. However, fire did smolder for 3 years, but at last it manifested itself. Okay, let's see, we've got about 5 minutes. Okay, well, we can read this, and where are we? Okay, Verna, would you read verses 22 through 25, please?
Okay, thank you. After Abimelech had governed Israel 3 years, God stirred up animosity between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem, so that they acted treacherously against Abimelech. God did this in order that the crime against Jerubbaal's 70 sons, the shedding of their blood, might be avenged on their brother Abimelech and on the citizens of Shechem, who had helped him murder his brothers. In opposition to him, these citizens of Shechem set men on the hilltops to ambush and rob everyone who passed by, and this was reported to Abimelech.
Okay, difference in translation, interesting. Verna, go back to what you first read. God sent what between Abimelech and the men of Shechem?
After Abimelech had governed Israel 3 years, is that what you want?
Yes, the next sentence. Or the next
Okay,
part.
God stirred up animosity between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem, so that
Okay,
they acted.
That's okay.
Okay,
Thank you. Stirred up animosity. That's interesting because my whole premise I was going to speak of belongs to a different translation. And mine, I don't know, does anyone else have that translation that she used?
I have an evil spirit.
That's what I've got.
That's
Okay.
what-
Yeah, God sent a spirit of ill will between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, which made me, of course, who is the spirit of animosity? Or who is the spirit of ill will?
Devil.
The devil, yeah, okay. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting translation there that you had. But this struck me by calling it the spirit of ill will. We look at it as Satan, which it very definitely, it definitely is. And if you want to cause trouble, there's nobody better at doing that than the devil, okay? So God allowed this, okay? He allowed the devil to come, and we know there are circumstances where God allowed the devil to intervene. For instance, when Jesus was tempted, brought up to the top of the hill and the building and all, and he was tempted by the devil. God permitted that, okay? And we know that the devil interferes with our lives and offers us, tempts us, alluring, to give us something. So we come into a little military stuff in a minute, but no, next week actually. But anyway, the spirit of ill will coming in here, I just like I love the way it's worded, because when I say chaos results, and to me, that's what the devil does. He's evil. He hurts physically, emotionally, ourselves and those we love, the world. Look at the world today, okay, the crime and all that kind of stuff. But to me, the word that really fits it is chaos. And that's what this whole next section is about, the chaos that comes out of this. Okay, and it is the spirit of ill will that's coming up. So, just bear in mind that, the men of Shechem thought that Abimelech was just wonderful. He's our king. Well, after 3 years of him, they didn't think quite so highly of him. So I am sure he got all the money he could, raised taxes, did all that kind of neat stuff, okay? He probably wasn't very nice to the people he ruled over. What's interesting in this whole section of Abimelech, they never mention him judging anything, okay? He's listed in the book of Judges. They never call him a judge, and we never hear of him judging anything, okay? So I would guess, this is me, I would guess anything he judged was for his benefit and it hurt somebody else. And 3 years of that, these men of Shechem had had enough. And so they decided they were going to do something about it. Okay, I guess we better end it right there, and we'll pick that up next time. And I hope we don't freeze. Oh, I do want to read something in closing. This is another one of the contemporary hymns, the music of which I can't stand, okay, but the words are wonderful. And this was done at our church a couple of weeks ago, and it reaches out to me, to our class, as we are studying the Bible, which is the Word, okay? The title of it is called Ancient Words, which is what the Bible is, okay? Holy words, long preserved for our walk in this world, they resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope. Give us strength, help us cope. In this world, where'er we roam, ancient words will guide us home. Ancient words, ever true, changing me, changing you. We have come with open hearts. Oh, let the ancient words impart. I will leave you with that thought. Have a great week.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Great
Great
lesson.
lesson.
Barbara.
Bye,
Wonderful.
everyone.
Have a good week.
Yep.